Clara Mitchell watched her family's 150-year-old farmhouse disappear into flames from the evacuation center parking lot, her phone screen showing the live news feed of her life burning away. The redwood fire had consumed 50,000 acres in 2 days, and the small farming community of Pine Ridge was directly in its path. "Mom, is our house really gone?" asked her 8-year-old son Tommy, clutching his favorite stuffed bear, the only toy they'd managed to grab during the frantic evacuation. Clara couldn't find words. For generations of her family had lived on that land, raised cattle, and grown vegetables that fed the entire region. Around them in the Red Cross shelter, 200 other families faced the same devastating reality. Pine Ridge's 800 residents had lost everything: homes, barns, livestock, and the agricultural infrastructure that was their livelihood. Farmer Joe Santos stared at photos on his phone showing his prize-winning Holstein cattle, now just memories and insurance claims. The fire chief's voice crackled over the emergency radio. "Pine Ridge is 90% destroyed. Total structures lost: 312 homes, 15 businesses, 8 farms." Clara felt her knees buckle. Her husband Mike wrapped his arms around her as she sobbed into his chest. Their insurance would cover maybe half of what they'd lost, and at 58, starting over seemed impossible. That night, unable to sleep on the cot provided by the shelter, Clara wrote an email on her cracked phone screen. "Dear President Trump, Pine Ridge is gone. Our community, our farms, our way of life, all ash. We need more than money. We need hope that we can rebuild what took generations to create." 48 hours after Clara sent her desperate email, her phone rang with a Washington, D.C. number. "Mrs. Mitchell? This is Jennifer Walsh from President Trump's office. The president read your email personally and wants to visit Pine Ridge tomorrow. Can you gather your community?" Clara nearly dropped her phone. "You mean he's really coming? Here?" Jennifer's voice was warm and reassuring. "Mrs. Mitchell, President Trump was deeply moved by your message and the photos of your destroyed community. He'll arrive at 2 p.m. tomorrow at your evacuation center." Word spread through the shelter like wildfire, the good kind this time. For the first time since losing everything, the Pine Ridge residents felt a spark of hope. President Trump was coming to see them, to witness their devastation, to hear their stories personally. The next afternoon, Marine One landed in the field beside the evacuation center. Trump emerged and immediately walked toward the crowd of displaced residents, many still wearing the same clothes they'd fled in days earlier. Instead of formal remarks, he began with a simple statement. "I came here because Americans don't abandon Americans." Clara found herself face to face with the president when he stopped at her family's corner of the shelter. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, taking her soot-stained hand, "I read every word of your email. You wrote about generations of hard work turning to ash. That ends today." Trump's eyes were serious and determined as he continued. "Your community didn't just lose buildings, you lost your heritage. But heritage isn't made of wood and brick. It's made of people like you who refuse to give up." Clara felt tears streaming down her face as she realized this man truly understood what they'd lost and what they needed to find again. Standing among the charred remains of Pine Ridge's main street, President Trump addressed the assembled community with words that would reshape their future. Behind him, skeletal remains of the general store, post office, and Clara's family farmhouse created a stark backdrop of destruction. "Pine Ridge," Trump declared, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "I'm not here to make empty promises. I'm here to make commitments." He announced immediate federal emergency funding with unprecedented speed, funds that would be available within 72 hours, not the typical months of bureaucratic delays. But his commitment went far beyond money. Trump pledged that Pine Ridge would be rebuilt as a model sustainable farming community, with fire-resistant construction, modern irrigation systems, and agricultural technology that would make their farms more productive than ever before. "Clara," Trump called out, looking directly at the woman whose email had brought him here. "Your family's farm will be the first we rebuild. Not just back to what it was, but better than it ever dreamed of being." The crowd erupted in applause as Clara broke down, crying tears of joy and disbelief. Trump made personal commitments to each major family affected. Joe Santos would receive purebred cattle to restart his herd, the Johnsons would get a modern dairy operation, and the community would have a new agricultural center for processing and distribution. 90 days from today," Trump announced as his final promise, "I'll return for the Pine Ridge Renaissance Festival. This community will rise from these ashes stronger, more beautiful, and more prosperous than ever before." As he spoke, a gentle rain began to fall, the first precipitation in months, and a sign that even nature was ready for Pine Ridge's rebirth. 90 days later, Clara Mitchell stood in her brand-new kitchen, looking out at fields that were already green with new crops. The modern farmhouse was built to withstand any fire, with sprinkler systems, fire-resistant materials, and solar power that made them energy independent. The Pine Ridge Renaissance Festival was in full swing outside her window. Where ash and devastation had reigned 3 months earlier, a vibrant community celebrated its miraculous rebirth. The new Main Street bustled with activity, rebuilt businesses, a modern community center, and agricultural facilities that were the envy of the region. President Trump's motorcade arrived precisely on schedule, and he emerged to a community transformed beyond recognition. The crowd that greeted him was 3 times larger than the original population. Families from neighboring towns had moved to Pine Ridge, drawn by the story of resilience and the promise of a better future. "Ladies and gentlemen," Trump announced from the bandstand in the new town square, 90 days ago, Pine Ridge was ash. Today, it's proof that American communities don't just survive, they thrive." The crowd's cheers echoed across the rebuilt valley. Clara had the honor of presenting Trump with the first harvest from her new fields, organic vegetables grown in soil enriched by the ash of the old Pine Ridge. "Mr. President," she said, her voice strong and clear, "you didn't just rebuild our homes. You rebuilt our belief that tomorrow can be better than yesterday." As Trump toured the new facilities, the high-tech dairy, the agricultural processing center, the community greenhouse, he marveled at what had been accomplished. "Clara," he said, as they walked through her thriving vegetable garden, "your email saved more than Pine Ridge. It showed America what's possible when we refuse to let disaster define our future." The Pine Ridge Renaissance became a model studied by communities worldwide, proving that from the ashes of tragedy can rise something more beautiful than anyone dared imagine. Clara's desperate plea for hope had become a beacon of possibility for anyone facing impossible odds.